Good afternoon, everybody. This is Eric Stites with Franchise Business Review, and I want to welcome you today to our presentation, Buying a Franchise During Uncertain Times. And clearly, I think as far as uncertain times go, they pretty much don't get any more uncertain than this. Before we even get started, I just hope that everybody is healthy and their family is safe and you're settled in somewhere and staying away from all the disease that's out there. We will certainly get through this. It is, I think, shocking and surprising for a lot of people. I wish everybody the best of success. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, how this affected the franchise world, how this will affect the franchise world going forward, and what it means for someone like yourselves that may be considering buying a franchise in these times. My guest today is Al Simon. He is a Sandler Training franchisee in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have a lot of great questions for Al. Before we get started with Al, what I want to kind of share with folks is that, when we typically give a lot of presentations on franchising and buying a franchise, we really look at it as a 5-phase process. And, really that process begins with explore, and then getting educated, doing your research and kind of narrowing that research down on a couple of opportunities, doing some major planning around that, and then ultimately at the end, making a decision. And really is that, that's a decision to either buy a franchise business and move forward, or maybe it's taking a job somewhere else, or doing some other opportunity. I understand that everyone's life right now is dramatically probably in flux. But if you are home, working from home and have some extra time, if you're one of the unfortunate people that may have been laid off recently, you may have extra time on your hands right now to explore franchising. And there's no better tool than the internet to help you do some of that research and really look at all the vast opportunities out there. The amazing thing about franchising is that it goes across every conceivable industry you can imagine. And we'll talk a little bit about that today with Al. But there's businesses out there that you've never even could have imagined exist, servicing customers and doing business in the franchise world. And that's really, in the research that we've done, we found that most people end up buying into a franchise system, investing in a franchise that they never imagined that they were, getting into. And many people start, they know the food franchises. Certainly, you drive down the highway and you see those brands every day. And so I think that attracts a lot of people to the franchise business. But again, they go across every imaginable industry that's out there. Just a couple of resources for everyone, and I can make this presentation available for folks that would want it. My email address is simply Eric, ERIC, at franchisebusinessreview.com. And if you just shoot me an email, I'll be happy to send you this presentation. And we also can send out other resources to everybody that registered as well. But certainly our website at franchisebusinessreview.com is a great place to start. The International Franchise Association has a number of great resources. That's franchise.org. There's a number of different franchise publications out there, Franchise Times, franchising.com, which is Franchise Update, and Franchise Multi-Unit Franchise Magazine. Great information out there. And then also the SBA at sba.gov has a lot of great learning resources. And, and when you're educating yourself about franchising, certainly it's important to, look at both the franchise industry as well as business as in general. So educate yourself about business ownership and resources that you may need, as well as looking at different franchise opportunities. Just a couple of books that are also great reads too is, and no offense to anyone, but Franchising for Dummies is a great reference, as well as The Educated Franchisee. The Educated Franchisee was written by a friend of mine, Rick Bizio, who's a franchise consultant based in Florida. Great resources there for anyone as well. So again, the important thing about getting into franchising is really just getting yourself educated, understanding what franchising is all about, exploring the various opportunities that are out there, talking to franchisees as much as possible and understanding what their day-to-day is like. And then ultimately you can make a good educated decision at the end of the day. I am very pro franchising. I will sometimes come across negatively and make comments about certain things that people are like, whoa, what does that mean? But I am very pro franchising, but I want everybody to get very educated about what franchising is about. Certainly you're going to need to educate yourself about a brand that you might consider investing in, and talk to franchise owners, and they're going to be one of your greatest resources to really understand what franchising is about, because I can tell you franchising is not for everyone. Business ownership is not a silver bullet to success and wealth. It's a lot of hard work, and we'll hear some of that today. But for a lot of people, it is a great fit. It's a great opportunity to get into business for yourself, but not by yourself, and really not have to create something from scratch. So with that, I really want to get back to Al. And Al, how are you today?
Doing well, Eric. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for taking some time out of your day and sharing your story with us. Um, what I'd first like you to do is just tell us a little bit about Sandler Training. I think Sandler is probably one of those brands that a lot of people haven't necessarily heard of. And I think it's a great example of a very large successful brand in franchising that may kind of fly under the radar. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the brand?
Okay, yeah, I didn't, and I was a lifetime, or I should say a career salesperson before I came across Sandler. I had been in sales for 22 years before learning about Sandler. And then 2 years after that, I bought the franchise. But Sandler today is a worldwide organization. They're in like 33 countries. There's about 260 or 265, I'm not sure the exact number, franchise business owners around the world. 190 of those are in North America. And most of us are very small teams. I think, the largest team I know of is maybe 8, 9 people. There's a lot of one-person franchises, and I have 3.1 on my team.
Nice.
Yeah, and we've had it. This is our 19th year, and it's been a great decision, a great lifestyle for us.
Yeah. So when we talk about uncertain times, when we look back over the last couple of decades, I mean, certainly the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 come to mind. But even more importantly, I think of 9/11 and the immediate impact 9/11 had on the economy and the world around us. And that's, this whole Corona thing feels a lot like that.
It does.
I know you had signed your franchise agreement right during the whole 9/11 crisis. So, tell us a little bit about what that was like, and and how you kind of that reflects on today, I guess.
Okay, so I should mention that Sandler Training is mostly sales and sales management training and coaching. We also do, customer service training and coaching, and we also do general business management training and coaching. But we can, as franchise owners, we can do as much or as little of the entire suite of products and services as we want. I focus on sales and sales management. But in 2001, when we started, when I made the decision, and by the way, that 5-step process that you laid out in your first slide, I didn't know you, I didn't know Franchise Business Review at that time, but we definitely went through those 5 stages. My wife and I, but the time that we were going through those stages, there was no such thing as 9/11. It was the spring of 2001. We made the decision to go with it in late summer 2001, and then we wrote the big check and started our business September 10th, and it was the next day that the world collapsed.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so, I was a career salesperson. I had a lot of confidence that I could find clients and close business until 9/11, when people just didn't want to talk about business. People did not want to give you an appointment, and we had just spent most of our life savings and had no health care. We had no benefits, we had no salary, we had no income. It was very scary, but we had already made the decision, Eric.
Right.
Yeah. Pulled the
Yeah,
trigger.
it's
Yeah.
and it's interesting that I'm glad you mentioned those 5 stages and going through that process with your wife. And I mean, certainly, I give this advice a lot, is, owning a business, whether you're going into business with your spouse or not, your spouse, significant other, will be significantly involved and significantly impacted by your business ownership. So
Yeah.
it is important to make sure that they are on board and they go through that education process with you. I've seen time and time again where, someone, they stay up late on the computer and they do a lot of research. They hate their job or whatever it may be that's driving them to business ownership, and they find this business that they're all excited about, and and they spring it on their spouse, and their spouse is like, wait.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you're educating yourself as well as your spouse or significant other along that way too, because it may take them longer to kind of warm up to the idea. And again, to your point, when you make that leap and you don't have a check coming in, or you might not have health care the way you used to, I mean, it is an adjustment for a period of time.
Well, we had been married for 23 years at that point, and we would never make a major decision unilaterally without both of us being completely on board. And I had an offer from a company to join their sales team in my industry, and it was a great offer, and nice salary, commission package, benefits package. It was good, but I had already made the decision in my mind. I did not want to go back to corporate America, and
Right.
But my wife wasn't there yet in her mind, right? She, because she liked that nice income and that nice benefits package, and rightly so.
Right.
So we went through this whole thing, and I just told her, I said, look, let me do the research, and I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of Sandler franchise owners, and I put together a business plan, and I was looking at a couple of other things as well at the time. But I really had decided early on that I wanted to do Sandler if we were going to do anything. And so I put together that business plan and then laid it out for her. And then I left the room. And our agreement was that I would lay it all out, talk to her, and answer any of her questions, and then I would leave the room, and then she could be in that room as long as she wanted to, and she would make the decision. So I left the room fairly certain she was going to say no, And then when she came out like 45 minutes later and said yes, that's when I got scared. Like, what, are you nuts? What? But it was exciting too at the same time. And I'm sure that the listeners on this webinar, they're probably in that mode right now too. You're uncertain, but you're excited, I would think.
Yeah, it's I think again, it's crazy times for all of us, and but I think there's a lot of folks that I know from franchisees that I've talked to over the years that that they've always dreamed, and it takes most people a longer time than a lot of people think to make that decision of buying a business. It's some people, there are those unique individuals that make a decision in a couple of weeks and that's it. But for the vast majority of folks, it's months, if not a year plus of doing your homework, doing research about the industry, your local market, potential customers, researching the various brands that are out there, and so obviously everybody's different, but generally when you've got times like these, those processes and kind of cycles of education slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Al, I mean, just going back to when you launched, obviously the first week or so of the whole 9/11 crisis was, I'm sure, paralyzing. And nobody wanted to take your calls or, have a meeting.
Yeah.
How, what was your strategy, I guess, to kind of attack that? And, and being a part of a franchise brand, how did your franchisor kind of support you through that process?
You mentioned a few minutes ago, Eric, that not all franchise brands are excellent, and
Right.
and so do your due diligence, and that's great advice. Sandler is an incredible franchisor, and I could go on and on. Even right now during this COVID-19 crisis, all the things that the Sandler brand is doing for us, the franchisees, and how the franchisees all over the world are banding together to help each other. It is absolutely amazing. And it was back in 2001 when 9/11 happened. The franchisor really just dug in and assigned me a coach, a veteran Sandler person, to just work with me right through it. And I just stepped up the efforts. I mean, I've never worked so hard in my life with so little return in those days. And I remember that first week like it was yesterday. It was such a traumatic experience. But I was in. I didn't have any other alternative. I was in. I had already put my chips in the middle of the table, so I had no choice. And I remember, I set a goal of 100 dials a day, and every day I made 100 dials a day,
Right.
and I wouldn't stop until I had 100 dials. And this was before, really cell phones were all that prevalent. So, and email wasn't even being used that much in business at that time. So it was really phone calls, people. And so, people would answer more, I guess, than they probably do today. They would listen to voicemail more than they do today. So, in 100 dials a day in those times, I would probably have 5 or 6 conversations. Whereas today, there's a lot of digital going on, a lot of email, social media. It's a little different in terms of finding new prospects. But back in those days, it was all phone call.
Right.
Until I learned how to network and where to go networking and all that. But it was 5 or 6 conversations a day. 1 or 2 of those might turn into an appointment. But before 9/11, they told us that you should have a minimum of 8 appointments a week. Well, 9/11 happened, and I was lucky to get 2 appointments a week.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so when I'm assuming you had probably done a business plan and some financial projections
Yes.
When this all happened, did you kind of go back and reforecast those, or were you just kind of
Yeah.
flying by the seat of your pants?
No, had to completely redo it. It was completely off base. Um, it was based on, I mean, 2001 up until 9/11 happened. 2001 was very much a bull market time. Uh, Almost, probably not as bull market as this last couple of years has been here in the U.S., but certainly no one thought that the economy was going to crater. So that business plan was based on a very, very robust economy. And
Right.
all of a sudden, the economy was in the tank, just like today, and just like in 2008. And so, I had to redo it, completely redo it. But here's the thing about that, Eric, is that you really should base your business plan on the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
should. In my opinion, you should do that, because if you can't handle the worst case scenario, you should not go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to a number of folks recently that started, not during 9/11, but during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, similar economic conditions. And, and they said it was actually great. Not great, but it was a good way to kind of really learn the business, focus on, the things that matter. I mean, I think that's um, the silver lining of a down economy and tough times, uncertain times, is that, it really helps you focus your efforts. I mean, to your point of making 100 dials a day, like, you know pretty quickly what moves the needle. And, if you need to get one customer or two customers or five customers, what is the activity that is going to make that happen? And,
Yeah.
and all the other stuff is just, noise. And, I know a lot of people in business struggle today with that, myself included, because there's so many tools today. Back in, uh, 9/11 time, like as you mentioned, it was pretty much, business to business was done over the phone. Um, now there's, LinkedIn and social media and, email and Skype and, you name all these different ways of people communicating, resources for business owners, whether it's business owners or consumers. And it can be overwhelming for folks, I think, when you think about, okay, what activity should I do today to, go out and drive business. Whether you're in a business to business concept, like Sandler is, or whether you're in more of a business consumer concept, food concept, whatever it is. And what I always encourage folks to do is, whatever business or industry you're thinking about or exploring, is, again, go out and talk to franchisees, and find out, find the most successful franchisees in, whatever system it is that you're looking at, and ask them what their activities are that they're doing to really be successful in that business model. Because oftentimes that is very different than what the brand or the product is all about. McDonald's is a great example. Obviously a well-known, very large franchise system. The average McDonald operator, franchise owner, is not standing behind the grill, flipping burgers. Um, they're out in the community networking, they're building their business, they're managing a large staff, and usually managers of multiple locations. So, again, understanding what the skill set is of a franchisee to be successful in whatever brand it is that you're looking at is really, really, really important. A lot of people kind of fall in love with a product or a service, and yet, that's not necessarily where your time is going to be spent. And what you definitely want to avoid is buying into a franchise system where you've invested a lot of money and then find out 3, 6 months, a year down the road that, this isn't really something that you enjoy, because at that point, it's a lot harder to kind of unwind than it would be, just a changing jobs or something like that. So,
Yeah, we often joke that I spent a bunch of money for the right to make cold calls in my spare bedroom in those those early days. But now 19 years later, or 18 and a half years later, I can tell you, I wish I had done it sooner. Uh,
yeah,
I was 24 years as a corporate sales guy before I bought the franchise. I never thought of myself as going to be a business owner. I never really gave that much thought at all. But in the spring of 2001, the company I was working for at the time made me a free agent uh, because they didn't want to pay me a very large commission check that they had owed me. So they decided instead just to part ways.
oh,
And which was, and that was the second time in my 24-year career where I was leading the company in sales and was let go. The first time was for different reasons, but bottom line is I didn't have control of my career. In the end, corporations are not loyal to employees, even longtime employees. I have a friend of mine was with a bank for 27 years. He was 2.5 years away from full pension, and they fired him. I
right.
mean, things like that are just, and everybody's got stories like that, or knows people have stories like that. There's just no corporate loyalty anymore. And so
Yeah,
for me, Eric, it was the fact that I had no control over my own career. That's what made me want to be an entrepreneur, is to have control over my own career. But I didn't want to just start something from scratch on my own. I wanted a roadmap that had been driven before, right? Something that
right.
that people knew how to make it successful. And so the franchise idea made perfect sense for me. And now because I have a great franchisor, I have complete control over my career, absolute complete control. But I have intellectual property and tools and support that's second to none, which is
Yeah, no,
awesome.
you're right. I mean, that's, obviously the beauty of a franchise business is, you're kind of renting a business model, that's proven and has all the support behind it, but at the same time, you're building your own business, and, your assets are your assets, and I think that was kind of the silver lining of the 2008, 2009 slowdown, is that, a lot of people learned that, obviously being an employee is not a guarantee. The last few years, obviously, with unemployment being as low as it is, a lot of people have very secure jobs. That's obviously now changed overnight. Um, and why, owning your own business, there's no guarantee either. But to your point, you're your captain at that point. you know, you make the decisions, and, you secure your own future, and, you can obviously struggle, and there are business owners obviously that aren't successful, but, that's up to them to be successful or not, and not, up to, some corporate organization that may or may not lay you off.
Yeah, I was never good at the corporate politics, and didn't want to play the game, didn't want to learn how to play that game, and that ultimately cost me that part of my career, which turned out to be a good thing. And here's the other thing I found out too, Eric, once I started owning my own business, as tough as it was in those early couple of years, is that I had a lot more passion. Obviously I worked harder and longer hours in those early years than I'd
Yeah,
ever worked in my life, but never before had I enjoyed it so much, which was great, but it also made me feel guilty that I didn't give that full passionate effort for the company that employed me prior to me buying the business.
right,
So
right.
it was a big lesson learned. Now when I coach my clients, especially those who are business owners, and a lot of our clients are small business owners, medium business owners. almost all of our clients are privately held companies, and they expect their employees to have the same passion that they have, and it's just not going to be. It's just not there. You buy your own franchise, you got passion. It's amazing how that happens.
Right, right. Yeah, it's nice to get up every day and know that, all those efforts that you put in are basically going to, build your business, your wealth ultimately long term and control that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so Al, let's fast forward a few years from 9/11. I mean, I'm sure you've had other, challenges along the way. I mean, what, can you tell us a little bit about what some of those struggles have been, and how you've gotten over them, or how Sandler as the franchisor has kind of provided you resources to address some of those?
Yeah, well, fortunately, it's we eat our own dog food. A lot of the Sandler intellectual property is about mindset, and mindset is huge in tough times like this, and we can see it now. With so many people panicking and buying up all the toilet paper and all that stuff. But it's a lot of mindset. Is your mindset that one of abundance, or is it one of scarcity? And when 2008 hit, we had finally gotten our stride somewhere around 2004, 2005. The flywheel started turning more on its own, and so we were doing really well. 2008 hit, and all of a sudden, a lot of our clients started struggling, and it was obvious that some Sandler franchisees were struggling. We actually grew every year since 2005. We grew all through the recession.
Wow.
And again, it was because of the franchise support, and because of the KPIs and behaviors that we had committed to. And so we just put our heads down and did it, and helped our clients get through it, and that in turn helped us get through it. It was it's that helping others get what they want, and you get what you want. It's
Right,
amazing
right.
how that works, but that's what we did, and it worked great. The other challenges we've had, as being kind of an old guy, a baby boomer, every time technology changed, and it changed a lot, and like you mentioned, social media and email and videos, and and I mean, I'm just not I'm an old-fashioned guy, right? I mean, I had a hard time, I had a hard time learning how to do email.
Right, right.
And so, and it's so tough to sell through words on a screen. You really, real selling is done when two people having a frank conversation, and that's still true today, by the way. But we learn how to use technology and the way people communicate to make things happen.
Right.
And so again, we had to do that for ourselves and do that for our clients, help our clients do that as well. So turns out, Eric, you actually can teach an old dog new tricks and get that old dog to teach others those tricks. So
Right, right.
yeah, but it's been, so I'm 65 years old. The finish line is starting to become visible to me, a little fuzzy. I'll probably go another 5 to 7 years. I'm thinking right now, but the last 18 and a half years have been easily the most fulfilling, even though a lot of it's been challenging, easily the most fulfilling of
Right.
my entire business career.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the big benefits, I shouldn't say I think, I know one of the big benefits of franchising is really the franchisee network itself. And what I think a lot of people looking at investing in franchising often overlook that. They look at the various industries and they find a couple of brands that they're interested in, and they do their due diligence on the brand, and they might go and meet with the corporate team and all of that. But the huge value for any franchisee is the other franchisees in the network. in the relationship and culture that the company has. And again, we work with hundreds of different franchise companies. I've been to lots and lots and lots of different franchise conventions for each of these different brands. And every company is different. Some, it's like a family reunion when you go to their convention. Others, it's like you can, hear crickets during the presentations, and then everybody runs back to their hotel room. Can you tell us a little bit about Sandler's, I guess, culture and, maybe how that's changed over the years, how you kind of assess that when you bought into the system, and, and how that kind of evolved today?
Yeah, I think that 9/11 and the recession and now the COVID-19 has changed Sandler's culture. All three things. When I first started in 2001, we would go to those conferences, and it was a whole bunch of type A personalities, right? That's what salespeople are, is, type A personalities, and very competitive people. And I felt that. But today, still a bunch of type A personalities, still very competitive people, but they're so focused. We all are very focused on helping each other thrive. The turnover or failure rate of franchisees in the Sandler network is very, very low, incredibly low, and 4 or 5 times lower than it was when I first joined.
Right, right.
So yeah, so the franchisor has come a long way, and the franchisees have that abundance mentality. I'll give you an example. There are 4 other Sandler franchise owners here in the Metro Atlanta area. So technically, we compete against each other, right?
Right.
Technically, because there's supposedly a limited number of prospects out there, and we're all going for the same people. But it's the most sharing, giving, helping 5 franchise owners you could ever meet, and it makes it great for all of us, and it's really good for the brand. And we refuse to compete against each other. That's one thing. Another thing is we're always stepping in for each other. And when my wife had surgery on a day when I had 2 training classes scheduled, and another franchisee here in town did that training for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when we realized that was an awesome thing, and by the way, I didn't ask her; she volunteered that. And then after that happened, we decided, what? Each of our clients probably would like a different trainer once in a while. So we started doing the guest trainer thing for each other, and,
Oh,
and we do
cool.
that. We still do that kind of thing. We share the podium with each other from time to time in different like seminars, webinars, things like that, and we're always helping each other with best practices all the time. We have a regional group. Every region in Sandler has a regional group. Of course, here in Atlanta, we're a part of the southern region, and your friend Kevin is a member of the New England region.
Right.
And so Sandler meets worldwide 3 times a year, and the regions typically meet 2 times a year. So that's 5 times altogether that we meet together, sharing best practices, helping each other out, what's working, what's not working, what's changing, so all those, economic changes, all those technology changes, all those industry changes, best practices in what we do, which is training and coaching. We always help each other with that kind of stuff. I could go on and on. Obviously, I'm talking too much about it. I just love the fact that Sandler does that. I know there's a lot of other franchise brands that you work with, Eric, that are like that really, really focused on helping the franchisees, and the franchisees are focused on helping each other thrive.
Right. Right. Yeah, that best practices sharing is, I mean, you're right. I mean, it doesn't happen in all brands, certainly I think it's kind of the best brands that happens in Bill Rosenberg, who was the founder of Dunkin' Donuts, I think, said it best. It's a little cliche in the industry, but the saying that he always said was, in franchising, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And again, going back to that value of the franchise network is that, yes, the franchisor has to provide training and support and have all those programs in place, marketing programs, whatever it may be. But a lot of times, most of that support that you get in the long term is going to come from your, regional and local franchisees around you, and understanding, what that culture's like, talking to franchisees, are these the type of people that I want to hang out with? And, because again, there's a lot of great franchise brands out there, but it may not be a great cultural fit for you personally. So understanding, what is the culture of the company like, both at the corporate level and at the franchisee level, and do they share best practices? Are they does the franchisor encourage, other regional meetings or peer groups to get together and share financials or whatever other information? And again, when you think about going to whether it's a regional meeting or an annual convention, and being able to walk up to the most successful franchisee in that network that you're in and pick their brain on a problem that you're having. I mean, again, that's the true value of franchising that I think a lot of people don't even think about when they're doing their initial exploring.
Yeah, it's an invaluable resource for us. In fact, earlier today, I was on a video call with a fairly new Sandler franchise owner in another southern state. And I just spent 45 minutes helping her to calm down about this whole thing, and helping her figure out what best practice would be for her to keep going here and get through this.
Right.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so I want to remind everybody on the call that we want to take as many questions as possible. There's a question box there that you can type your question into. We've got about 15 or so minutes left. So any question that's top of mind, just type it in. One question that did come in earlier, Al, was just, if you could share your opinion on what factors people should be considering when investing, obviously in a business, especially this, in a crisis like this, a down economy. Does that change the type of businesses or other things that you look at when you're thinking about investing in a business?
Well, I think that depends, Eric, on whether you have a short-term or a long-term goal for your investment. If you have a long-term goal, I don't know that it matters which
Right.
industry or type of franchise in terms of, from a financial standpoint. But I think you should look at it from a lifestyle standpoint. What do you think you would enjoy doing? And what kinds of people would you enjoy working with? And because that's really, once you have your own business, your life is around that business, and you've got to think in terms of lifestyle.
Right.
So like an example of myself, I recently, well, it's been a year now, I decided that I would wanted to go to a 4-day work week. I just decided I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to a 4-day work week from a 5-day work week. And really, it's not 5 days even, because I spend a lot of time on the weekends doing reporting and planning and stuff. But not a lot. I'm not a 70, 80 hour a week type guy anymore. Not even close.
Right.
But I made the decision I'm going to go to 4 days, but I'm not going to allow our revenue to go down. And so that's my dashboard. I still do all my KPIs. We call them minimum behaviors.
Yep.
But I have to do it in 4 days instead of 5. So I go pretty hard for 4 days, and then I get 3 days off, and it's working. In fact,
Great.
our revenue's gone up. So I think there's a lesson there, is that you get this is, you can look at it like an investment, a financial investment, and it is, but it's really, to me, a lifestyle choice. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And again, like when you've got the KPIs and you know what kind of moves the needle in your business, and you've obviously been doing this a long time, you can kind of narrow that down and say, okay, this is what needs to happen in those 4 days versus the 5 days. That I guess the flip side of that I hear a lot of when I go to conferences and speak to potential candidates, and I get asked a lot, Eric, I want to get into business for myself. I need to make $150,000 a year, and I want to have this car, or work 3 days a week. And and the reality is, we all know business owners that are successful. They may live in our neighborhood or some other community group that we're a part of, church, whatever it may be. And a lot of people get attracted to that lifestyle that individual has, which obviously is attractive. But what they don't necessarily see is the 5, 10, 15 years of hard work and hard labor that individual put into building that business. So I caution people all the time. I'm like, franchising is great, business ownership is great, but you don't expect to come out of the gates making a 6-figure income and working 3 days a week and playing golf the rest of the time. It just doesn't always work that way.
Yeah,
If
certainly
it,
doesn't. Certainly didn't for me back in 2001. But and I think anybody buying a franchise right now certainly can't expect that for 2020. But the cool thing about, if there is a silver lining in COVID-19, is that that a turnaround is going to be right on the heels of this.
right.
History shows that's always the case, and so this actually might be a great time to buy a business.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to address that too, because a question that came in was related to financing. And certainly as part of your research, when you're kind of looking at options, and there's a range of different investments out there in franchising. I mean, there's franchises that start under 10,000, all the way up to multi-millions of dollars, depending on the type of industry that you're looking at. Generally speaking, food brands, any brand that has a real estate location as part of the deal, you're generally talking about $500,000 or more. Service businesses, B2B type of businesses, there's a lot that are under $100,000, certainly under $50,000 in many cases. And and there's a lot of programs in the SBA, is obviously helps funding small businesses. I think in this type of environment, I know that Congress just passed a huge bill this morning that's going to fund a lot of existing business owners, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of growth financing coming as well for people that want to start new businesses and are looking for capital. So there are lots of options out there, and that certainly that's part of the process when you're thinking about the type of business that you want to own, and maybe what you can afford. Finding out, talking to local bankers in your community, what kind of programs they may have, whether it's through the Small Business Association Administration, SBA loans, or more of a conventional loan. Other options for you. There are programs and companies out there that will help you with rolling over your retirement funds to put those to work into a business that you own without paying the penalties associated with that. Al, when you were looking at this, again, I know it's been almost 20 years now, but how did you kind of evaluate that initial investment, and knowing that there'd be some period of time where you wouldn't have revenue coming in? I mean, you had the the benefit of your wife working, I guess, so that helps certainly. But how did you
Yeah,
look at that kind of initial investment piece?
yeah, she had an income. She had a full-time job, and then she did our books at night. And then in 2007, I believe, is when she quit that job and joined us full-time. Um, but but we didn't want to get a loan. We did get a line of credit from a bank, but we paid we paid the franchise fee with the lump sum settlement we got from the company that had fired me without paying that commission check. So we actually did get them to pay us most of that commission check through a legal action we took. We took that money and paid the down, the franchise fee to get in. But we had, but Sandler themselves, the franchisor and other franchisees had made sure to tell us that, that initial franchise fee is not your only investment. I mean, you've got to make sure when you start that you've got money ready to go for marketing purposes, for facilities, for, just general expenses, networking, things like that. Now, we didn't have a lot of capital equipment. We didn't go out and buy a training center that first year. We used an executive suites type arrangement to start.
Right.
Even today, 18 and a half years later, we don't have a lot of capital expenses, but we have a pretty good sized budget. So we figured that, I believe back, if I remember right, back in 2001, we figured our expenses at about 100,000 a year for the first couple of years, and that turned out to be pretty much on track.
Right. Right.
But we did it. We didn't go into debt other than the line of credit. We did not get a loan, but
Yeah.
we could have done that. Yeah.
Well, and certainly for those that do have a spouse that's working, that's a great option. Certainly, I know a lot of people that have spouses that are teachers that get good benefits, so they can use their spouse's health care while they're getting their business up and running. If you don't have that luxury, obviously, besides your own personal savings, retirement funds that you may be able to tap into, other friends and family financing. Like I said, I mean, SBA programs are available at most, community banks, and just go out and talk to as many financial people, bankers, and lenders in your community, and develop those relationships now while you're starting this. Even though you haven't settled on a specific brand, starting those relationships now can certainly help. And maybe not this week, just because there's so much chaos going on in the marketplace with existing business owners contacting their bankers, that I'm sure bankers are going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. But starting to kind of seed those relationships early certainly helps. And then we have a bunch of other resources. Anybody that wants to reach out and ask more about financial related questions, just shoot me an email, and I'll give you my email address again at the end of the presentation. Al, what what do you think are those kind of key things that people should be looking at when looking at a franchise or franchise opportunities, and trying to narrow down their focus? Say I want to invest in a business services franchise or a food franchise. I mean, in your mind, what do you think kind of those key things that people should start looking at first to kind of narrow down to a couple of brands?
One of the one of the mistakes I think that people make when they decide to invest in a business, especially a franchise, is they think they can do it part-time.
Right.
Have a couple of other things going on. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think that's the rare person who can have another job or another entity going and still give a new franchise the attention it needs. So I would be careful about any franchisor that think, you know, that leads you on to thinking you can do it in your spare time. But I hate that phrase.
Right.
You know, spare time. What does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
so
I want to be an absentee owner.
yeah. Well, that's another mistake too. If they decide that they're going to buy it but have someone else run it,
Yeah.
again, there, you know, there's that lack of passion.
Yeah.
There's something about when it's yours, your money, your effort, you know, and you're all in. That's when you see new businesses thrive. And I tell you what, your customer base sees it too. The customer base will tell others. You know, if you look at restaurants, I mean, if you look at reviews of restaurants, what do you see when you have the good reviews? You see that, you know, it's all about how the owner came out and talked to us, and we just really felt at home. And when they're bad reviews, it's like, well, you know, the person behind the counter didn't even make eye contact, and they didn't care, and they didn't fix our issue. I mean, so you see that with restaurants and retail because those are readily available reviews you see on the internet. But like on a business services, it's the same kind of thing. Word gets around. You know, people talk, and you can not only alienate your first customers, but you can alienate anybody who talks to your first customers that you haven't even met yet. If you're just not all in and treating your customers like they should be treated.
Right.
Those are the mistakes I see happening.
Yeah.
And I would really check out the franchisor with the other franchisees. You know, if you don't hear the kinds of things that I've talked about with Sandler, then I don't care how much you really want that brand. It's not good for you. It's
Right.
not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I know many of the best franchise brands out there, you know, they don't allow part-time franchisees for sure, and or absentee owners even at the beginning. You know, they want that, you know, person to be in there in the business, operating the business, and understand everything that's going on. You know, with the exception of a few models, there are some models out there. Like I know some in the hair care space where they allow you to keep your day job until you get a couple of units open and operating, and at that point you can become full-time. And so there are exceptions, but to your point, you know, I think that most people that do things part-time don't do them very well. If you're not all in, you know, it can what you don't want to do is spend a lot of money on something and not give it your all, because it's not going to get the best results. We do have, I know we're running out of time here, and I got way more questions than we can get to. One quick question that came in from Greg was asking about delaying royalties because of COVID-19 and can FDDs be amended and that sort of thing. You know, and I can answer that, Greg. Generally speaking, franchise agreements aren't altered in, you know, they're uniform basically for everyone. You know, that you obviously as the franchisor, you can't operate efficiently if you've got 100 different franchise agreements and 100 different terms out there. That being said, in these times, there are unique things going on, certainly with franchisors. It's been amazing the last 2 weeks just watching the franchise systems that we work with, the things that they're doing to support their franchisees through this. You know, they know they're having a hard time. Many of them are shut down completely. Many of them are operating. If they are operating, they're operating at, you know, half or significantly less than they would normally be. So you are seeing things like royalties being deferred. You know, you'll still ultimately have to pay those down the road, but, you know, deferring those payments for now to help, you know, in many cases, help a franchisee make payroll, that sort of thing. So those are things you can certainly look for in when you're talking to a franchisor. I think what franchisors did during this time period will be very telling, you know, 6 months, a year from now, when when you're trying to make a final decision, ask those questions, because the good franchisors in these times certainly are much easier to spot, so to speak. Al, I want to thank you for taking the time again today and sharing some of your insights. I know we could probably talk for hours, but I don't want to take up any more of your day.
I appreciate that, Eric. Thank you for having me
final
on.
thoughts before we go?
It's just it's a pleasure to talk to people who are considering business ownership. It's just really I find that people that are like-minded in that area tend to be some of the most forward-thinking, positive people that you run into.
Yeah, agreed. Well, again, thank you for your time. I wish you the best of success through this and through the next few years of Sandler until you decide to finally cash it in. For anybody that I will try and follow up with everybody that asked questions that we didn't have time to get to. Anybody that has additional questions, they want to reach out, they can email me at Eric, ERIC, at franchisebusinessreview.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Give me a phone call, whatever it is. I mean, we're here to help. Check out all the resources that we have on our website. And I wish you the best of success in exploring franchise opportunities. We will get through this. We've got challenges ahead of us, certainly with the whole virus scene right now, but we will get through this, and the best franchise companies are going to thrive in the end. So thanks again for attending today, and I wish you the best of success. Thanks again, Al.
You're welcome. Thank you.